Now that you have some introductory information about Asterisk and its history, we'll spend this chapter talking about how to download and install Asterisk and its components. In the first module, we'll discuss Asterisk's system requirements. We'll also explore how minimum system requirements depend on the expectations you have of your Asterisk system. In an attempt to help you properly dimension your Asterisk server, we'll offer some helpful tips on how to more accurately define your system's needs. Asterisk is supported on many major Linux distributions, including Red Hat, Fedora, Debian, Ubuntu, and CentOS. Asterisk is not constrained to these distributions alone, but these are the most frequently used and tested distributions on which Asterisk is run. Asterisk has been known to run on numerous other platforms, including Solaris, Mac OS X, Cygwin, and BSD variants. However, for production Asterisk systems, we recommend that you stick with one of the supported Linux distributions. An often asked question in the Asterisk community is, what are Asterisk's minimum system requirements? The answer varies dramatically based on what you want your Asterisk system to do. Pared-down versions of Asterisk have been loaded on systems as small as a stick of gum or on a repurposed Linksys router, and even on mobile phones. These are obviously not platforms we recommend you run a typical Office PBX on, but this might give you an idea of just how complicated it can be to answer questions about minimum system requirements for Asterisk. Better questions to ask when trying to determine the hardware needs for your Asterisk system are, what is the intended function of my Asterisk server, and how many people are going to use it? Questions like these will help you more insightfully consider what hardware you need to run Asterisk reliably. Let's look at a few factors to consider when dimensioning an Asterisk system. How many simultaneous calls do I expect? For every channel in Asterisk, there is a performance cost. The more calls there are on the system, the harder Asterisk has to work. Consider simultaneous calls. A PBX handling 100 users doesn't need to be dimensioned based on 100 concurrent calls. It's common to divide the total users by 10 or larger to estimate how many concurrent calls to expect. You should also consider the average load versus the peak load and decide just what you want the hardware to be capable of. Will my system be transcoding audio from one codec to another? Highly compressed codecs like G729 save on bandwidth but require processor overhead to translate to or from another encoding. The greater the number of simultaneous channels being transcoded, the greater the strain on the system. You'll want a more capable processor if the system will do much transcoding. Will my system be using conferences? If so, how many rooms and with how many users? The MeetMe conferencing application requires multiple channels of audio to be mixed together at once and can be quite taxing to your Asterisk system depending on how many conferences you have and how many channels are being mixed. This is in addition to any incurred transcoding cost. Here too you'll want a more capable processor. Will I be recording any calls? Call recording can fill up permanent storage at a surprising rate. If you plan on recording more than a few simultaneous calls, you'll want to make sure you have plenty of permanent storage. More system memory is also a good idea, so that audio can be buffered in RAM if it's coming in faster than it can be written to disk. What other applications or services do I want to run on my Asterisk system? We recommend that Asterisk systems not run other services. Where possible, we discourage running even a desktop environment on the Asterisk server. If you do decide to run other services on the system, such as a mail server, database server, or web server, keep in mind that Asterisk will have to share resources with them. On a busy system where there is resource contention, Asterisk may not always get what it needs. Remember that Asterisk handles real-time media that is very sensitive to delay. When a web server has to wait an extra second to respond to a guest, it's unlikely to matter. But even a 1-second delay with an Asterisk can seem like an eternity. Letting Asterisk have the whole machine to itself will go a long way towards preventing you from having to worry about resource contention. Once you have considered these factors, you will be ready to begin determining what hardware your system will run on. When deciding, you should keep these things in mind about the effects of hardware on your Asterisk system. Having sufficient processing power is critically important. Asterisk will need to perform numerous precise mathematical calculations to transcode audio, so whatever processor you choose needs to have a strong FPU or floating point unit. Most modern processors will work just fine. Within reason, one rule of thumb when deciding on a processor is bigger is better. You probably won't need multiple quad-core processors for a 5-person Office PBX, but in general, you're better off having too much processing power rather than not enough. Asterisk functions most reliably when it has plenty of RAM. Though there are things that can be done to reduce Asterisk memory usage, it's often a better solution to maximize the amount of available memory installed in the system. Many production Asterisk systems run on 8 GB or more of RAM. This isn't a strict requirement, and many systems get by on less than half that, but RAM is often inexpensive enough that it's worth adding more if you have the means to do so. Like with the processor, more is better. The motherboard you select is also important. Pay attention to the external hardware bus ports offered. If you plan to use add-in cards to provide networking interfaces, a RAID controller, or Digium telephony hardware, you'll want to make sure the motherboard provides physical interfaces compatible with the specific hardware you plan to install. You'll also want to select your power supply with some care. Make sure it supplies enough power for the system and all its devices. Beware underpowered and low-quality power supplies, which can wreak havoc on an Asterisk system. It's worth getting a quality power supply that will provide your system with clean, conditioned power. Having underpowered or low-quality hardware in any of these categories may result in degraded system performance, which can cause audio problems, dropped calls, or other issues within Asterisk. You surely realized we've discussed these factors qualitatively without giving specific recommendations for processor speed, memory quantity, or other technical specifications. If we could give you generic meaningful advice, we would. But there is no magic formula to recommend a hardware configuration for the specific way you'll use Asterisk. The best advice we can give is to thoroughly test prior to deploying a live Asterisk system. Test at or beyond the peak load you expect to make sure that the system can reliably handle the needs of your environment. We now know that Asterisk can run on numerous hardware platforms, running any major Linux distribution. We've also given advice to consider when deciding what hardware your Asterisk system will need, such as the importance of knowing what your system will be used for and the effects low-quality hardware can have. Now let's continue down the path of preparing our Asterisk system and move on to the Dependencies module to find out what software dependencies need to be resolved before Asterisk can be installed on your system.